Christina Holmes, just calling to make sure we're on for today for live streaming at 12:50. Thank you. Bye bye. Okay. Stream has been started too. The stream's been started. Huh? Yes.
you need technical assistance during your call, press *0. There are 8 parties in conference, including you.
Hello?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. So this is Claudia Lopez with the California Office of Tax Appeals, and we are about to begin the telephonic hearing of Hailah S. Eraga. And I would like to confirm that all participants are on the line, starting with the taxpayer's representative, Mr. Mosen.
Yes, I'm on the line.
Perfect. Now for respondent, the Department of Tax and Fee Administration, I have Ms. Renati.
Lisa Renati.
Perfect. Mr. Jason Parker.
Hi, Jason Parker's here.
Perfect. And then Mr. Brooks.
Yes, I'm here also.
Okay. And now for our panel, I have Judge Aldrich, Judge Wong,
Here.
and then Judge Reidner.
Here as well.
Okay. Thank you all for calling in, and we are ready to begin.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
I think we're all still here. We're just waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Should I begin, or I'm sorry.
Hi, Mr.
How do
Mosen.
we proceed here?
Mr. Mosen.
One of the judges will come on and say what's going on.
Okay.
Mr. Mosen, this is Claudia. Can you guys just give us a minute? We are trying to work out some technical difficulties.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Judge Josh Aldridge speaking.
hear me?
This is Judge Shireen Ridenour. I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful.
Hi, this is Judge Andrew Wong. The panelist is going to be calling in shortly, so that's why there's a pause.
Okay.
Hi, this is Judge Josh Aldridge. Can everyone hear me all right now?
Yes.
This is Mr. Mosen, yes.
Okay. So I believe everyone was here, and if we're ready to proceed, I will state my name each time that I speak, and I ask you to identify yourself each time you speak. Because of ongoing concerns pertaining to coronavirus, COVID-19, and consistent with the Governor's Executive Order in 2520, the Office of Tax Appeals has decided that it is in the public's best interest to move the Office of Tax Appeals' April calendar to telephonic hearings. We are holding these hearings telephonically with the agreement of both the taxpayer and the agency's representatives, and this change will not impact the fair and objective hearings of the tax appeals. This hearing is being conducted entirely electronically. All participants, including the administrative law judges, are dialing into this hearing. The audio will be live streamed to the public, and a stenographer will transcribe the audio of the hearing. I apologize for the delay. There was a technical issue at the beginning where there was too much reverb, but hopefully now everyone can hear me just fine. Our stenographer, Ms. Alonso, is using her equipment to take down everything that is being said on the record. To help us make a clear record that can be easily understood when read, I ask the following. Begin any statement by stating your name. Speak slowly and clearly into the microphone. Please do not interrupt when someone is speaking. It's common courtesy, and it's easier for Ms. Alonso to perform her work. And please do not engage in casual conversation. If a comment can be heard through the microphone, Ms. Alonso will report it. If Ms. Alonso cannot hear, understand, or identify someone, she has permission to interrupt at any time. As a quick point of clarification, we are the Office of Tax Appeals. We're a separate agency from the other departments charged with administering the tax programs. I'm the lead administrative law judge for purposes of conducting the hearing. I'm joined by Judges Andrew Wong and Shireen Reinauer. While I'm the lead for purposes of conducting this hearing, we three will deliberate and decide all the issues presented. Each of us will have an equal vote in those deliberations. We are opening the record in the appeal of H. Eraga, doing business as Ideal Market before the Office of Tax Appeals, case number 18124074. This hearing is being convened telephonically on April 21st, 2020 at 1 p.m. The hearing location is Cerritos, California. Should you experience connectivity issues, please try to reconnect as soon as possible. As a preliminary matter, the notice of hearing that went out identified a different hearing date and time. We asked the parties' agreement to move the hearing from April 23rd to April 21st because of a scheduling conflict. My understanding is that both parties consented to this calendar change. Appellant's representative, is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Moses? Okay. And representative for the department, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
For the appellant, could you please state your appearance? Could you give us your name, Mr. Mosen, and who you're representing?
Oh, yes, I apologize. Yes. My name is Hassan E. Mosen. I'm the representative for Hailah Eraga, DBA Ideal Market.
Thank you. And for the department, may I have your appearances?
This is Lisa Renati with California Department of Tax and Fee Administration.
And Jason Parker with the Department of Tax and Fee Administration. And Christopher L. Brooks, counsel for respondent.
This is Judge Josh Aldrich again. Thank you. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, the issue before us is whether appellant has shown that adjustments are warranted to the understatement of reported taxable sales. Is that correct, appellant? Mr. Mosen?
Yes, that is correct.
And department, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. So we previously marked proposed exhibits A through C for the respondent, CDTFA, on the April 3rd, 2020 minutes and orders. And appellant has not identified any exhibits. Are there any objections to the admission of the proposed exhibits from department? Mr. Mosen?
No. Can you indicate what those items were again?
Yeah. So the exhibit index indicates there's three exhibits A, B, and C, and I believe there's one second. So the notice of determination is pages 1 through 4. The audit work pages audit work papers are pages 5 through 156, and the decision and recommendation is pages 157 through 165.
Okay, and then you're asking that whether or not we agree with that documentation, or
it's not that whether or not you agree. Sorry, this is Judge Aldrich again. But it's whether or not you object to their being admitted into the evidence.
Oh, no, they're not objected for being admitted to as evidence, no.
Okay. No objections were raised, therefore Exhibits A through C are admitted as evidence into the record. And no additional exhibits have been presented today. Is that correct, Mr. Mosen?
Well, there are no additional exhibits brought forth, but there are discussion items that we've tried to discuss with the Department of Tax and Fee Administration, and we haven't received a response, so I'm not sure whether or not we should bring that forth to this conference, or if that information is actually still in their hands.
Well, as we're a separate agency, we may not have received what you're referring to. Could you identify that a little bit more? Are you referring to the video that was submitted in the response to the additional briefing letter?
Exactly.
And so what are you asking? Are you asking that that be included as an exhibit, or?
If it hasn't been so, then yes, that would be something that is necessary to be included as an exhibit.
This is Judge Aldrich again. To the department, do you have any objection to the admission of the video that was submitted in response to the additional briefing letter?
No objection. Oh, wait, just a second. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to rescind this is Lisa Renati. I'm going to rescind what I just said, and we're going to object on the grounds that they did not timely submit the exhibit as requested in the pre-hearing orders, and so we're going to object to the inclusion of the video at this time.
Mr. Mosen, do you have a response for department's objection?
Yes, we submitted the documentation. I'm looking at proof that this was submitted. I actually have a U.S. Postal tracking number, and it seems like the CDTFA responded stating that they would like to have that information resubmitted, and that was done so. They asked that be resubmitted before August 20th of 2018. This was a letter dated August 3rd by Karen Heeds, Appeals Conference Auditor, and that was resubmitted. So the information was provided, and for some reason the department actually stated that it was an issue with opening the file, and they wanted it to be resubmitted via USB drive.
Okay, so did you, Mr. Mosen, did you receive a copy of the pre-hearing conference notice and then also the minutes and orders of pre-hearing conference?
I have the procedures here of the conference. There's just a notice of hearing, And is that a document that was dated on March 26th of 2019 that also arrived with a CD?
So the pre-hearing orders were dated March 13th, 2020, and the minutes and orders pre-hearing conference, that's dated April 3rd, 2020.
I'm going through my record.
For me, Mr. Musson? Sorry?
Yes. Email address is my whole name, so HASSENEMOHSEN @gmail.com.
And you're saying that you didn't receive those?
I'm going through my file here, and I have a document dated April 15th from the Office of Tax Appeals. And it just looks like procedures of how to go through the conference. These minutes that you're referring to, I don't see anything dated anything in 2020 other than these documents. So I'm not sure if they were sent to the taxpayer or sent to our office. I apologize. I don't see any other documents dated in 2020. I have documents in 2019.
Could you hold for just a moment?
Oh, yes.
Hello, this is Shane, Judge Ridedower. I would like to request a 5-minute break, if that is okay, so we can go over the situation together with the panel.
That's fine with me.
This is Lee Bernardi. That's no objection.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Judge Josh Aldrich again. I want to make sure that everybody's back on the line after the 5-minute recess. Mr. Mosen, are you present?
Yes.
And Ms. Renati, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Brooks, are you present?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
So this is Judge Josh Aldrich. I'm going back on the record. So we have an objection to the admission of a video, the PITCO video that was submitted in response to the additional briefing request. Let's see. So I'm going to overrule the objection based on the fact that it's relevant. The party or the department had the opportunity to review the video, and in addition to that, there was a OTA legal notice, 2020-01, that was issued March 18th, 2020 on our website, and I think it was, but anyhow, it grants a 60-day extension to deadlines, and it was our response to the executive order in 2520. So I'll admit that video as Appellant's Exhibit 1. Let me see. And Mr. Mosen, does that? Do you have anything else that you'd like as an exhibit before we move on?
That's the only exhibit that we would like to include into this case at this time.
Okay. On the April 3rd, 2020 minutes and orders, I indicated time estimates for the hearing. And just so you guys are aware and can predict, I plan for the hearing to proceed as follows. Appellant, you'll present your opening statement, which I estimated at 15 minutes. Then CDTFA will present a combined opening presentation and closing remarks for an estimated 20 minutes. Appellant will then have approximately 5 minutes to close or rebut. But please keep in mind that these are just time estimates. I'm not going to be timing your presentations. Mr. Mosen, are you ready to begin your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Hassan Mosen. I'm the tax preparer and representative of the Ideal Market, which is owned as a sole proprietorship by Hailah Eraga. The exam that was performed by CDTFA was a routine audit exam. It was prepared by a tax auditor by the name of Felipe Dunez. He preceded his examination and went through documents that we had at our office. After reviewing the documentation, he felt it was warranted to also do a vendor survey, which is something that the CDTFA chooses to do. I'm not sure why they do that with some clients, and for others they don't, but they proceeded with the vendor survey simultaneously while reviewing the books and records. And the tax auditor then presented to us, so we can present to the client, that there was a understatement of purchases. The auditor agreed with the purchase markup that had been calculated for the business. However, because of the vendor survey, that actually had to an increase in the sales that the department had calculated versus the sales that the taxpayer had on their books and records. There were numerous issues with the exam. A lot of things were assumed, and I'm not sure why they were assumed. If we review some of the records that the auditor had prepared, in his documentation, he stated that Ideal Market is a market located in Oakland, California, that sells liquor, beer, wine, and soft drinks, cigarettes, and miscellaneous taxable products. We had discussed with the auditor that the business does not hold a liquor license. It's only a beer and wine facility. They do not have the authority through the Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control to even sell liquor. So I'm not sure why the auditor would assume that they would sell liquor. And this was brought to his attention on more than one occasion. Another issue that we had discussed with the auditor was that he had stated that they sell lottery. The taxpayer does not have lottery. On a few occasions when we had discussed these errors, the auditor became upset, and there were certain circumstances where he would say derogatory things such as, well, this business, you can find them on YouTube. There's some video footage of an altercation outside the business. This is a bad business. So I'm not sure what his intention was when he would bring these to the examination. He was supposed to examine the books and records. There's no need to say derogatory things about a certain business. He should stay as professional as possible. The issue that we have with the exam is because so much of this information is weighted on a vendor named Pitco Wholesale. We had discussed that with the taxpayer, that the auditor pulled records from the wholesaler. And when we presented that to the taxpayer came back with their own evidence, and I'm not sure how they attained this document or this video footage, but they had discussed to us that with the laxed business practices of Pitco Wholesale, that anyone can go into the business or the wholesaler and purchase under any business with very, very minor information. So if presumably if you have the name of the business, the address, you can walk into the wholesaler and actually make a purchase under an account falsely. So obviously that would be fraud of some sort. But the point of that is that the exam was done in such a way that any information that was put into the formula would obviously skew the information on the exam. So having more purchases obviously would have a higher sales amount that would be calculated based on that markup. So the taxpayer's stance has always been that they've reported all the information to us, the accountants, and that there are no additional purchases from this Pitco Wholesale that they had purchased. If somebody else were to enter the business and purchase under their account, that's something out of their control. And thusly, their position is that any information that they have in their hands and records is true and correct. Anything that Pitco is producing on their own, cannot be relied on, because if somebody can use their account, then how can they verify who is making the purchase of that product? And that is the position of the taxpayer. That is all, Your Honor.
Does that conclude your opening statement, Mr. Mosen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And consistent with the minutes and orders issued April 3rd, 2020, I want to confirm that you won't be presenting any witnesses?
No.
Okay. At this time, do my panel members have any questions for Mr. Mosen?
This is Judge Andrew Wong. I have a question.
Yes, Andrew.
Please proceed.
This is Judge Andrew Wong. This is a question for appellant's representative. Your client's position is that someone could make unauthorized purchases from this wholesaler. Does your client have any proof or evidence of that? It's kind of different. One thing to say it's possible, but it's another thing to say this probably happened. Is there any documentation or evidence that your client can provide to show that it likely happened?
Well, there are two different things that we presented to the CDTFA, and namely to the examiner. The first of which was a document that is actually produced by Pitco Wholesale that states that the account is on hold only for the taxpayer to present identification. So that's the first thing that is evidence. That was presented to the examiner, and somehow, I'm not sure why he would just brush that off. He relied on the data that was coming from the wholesaler themselves. He wasn't relying on that document. When I brought that back to the taxpayer then had a little bit of time to try to produce something, because I had to produce this evidence to the CDTFA, exactly the same, I had the same position you had. How do I know that, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to actually see, some evidence. So then the taxpayer came back to my office and brought video footage of an individual that entered into the wholesale, the Pitco Wholesale, and this was all captured on video. They asked to make a purchase and said that this was, for ideal market. They didn't provide any identification. They didn't provide any form of proof or seller's permit or some sort of documentation to establish that they were the actual holders of that permit, seller's permit, or account holder, and then proceeded to make a purchase. That information was provided to the auditor. The auditor was very upset. I want to, he didn't get aggressive, but as he was watching the footage in my office, he had to defend his work. So he started making claims. I don't know what he was trying to claim, but basically, he didn't want to believe that this information was real, but it's real. It's right in front of him. It's video footage. And we discussed that with the auditor. The auditor said they'll discuss that with their supervisor. There was no information that was relayed back to us that whether or not they accepted or denied. We brought this before the supervisor, the lead auditor or the supervisor of his supervisor. Again, no discussion, nothing was discussed regarding that video, and we keep stressing that this is clear and proof, clear evidence that establishes that anyone could go into that wholesaler and make a purchase, and if that is the case, then the information obviously in that computer system at Pitco Wholesale cannot be relied upon if a person is making a purchase under somebody else's account falsely. And that's the elephant in the room that no one's discussing. Now, has Pitco Wholesale changed their policies? I'm not sure. But this is obviously for the tax period of April 2012 through December of 2014. They might have changed their business practices, but this is something that was an issue, and if it was an issue, then the department has to realize that and recognize that as a problem if they're going to rely on the documentation that comes from this wholesaler.
Thank you, Mr. Mosen.
Thank you. I hope that answered the question.
This is Judge Andrew Wong. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Okay.
This is Judge Ridenauer. No questions.
Thank you. This is Judge Aldrich. So, Department, are you ready to begin your combined opening closing statement?
This is Lisa Renati. I'm ready.
Please proceed when you're ready.
The appellant, a sole proprietor, operated a convenience store in Oakland, California, with sales of beer, wine, cigarettes, carbonated beverages, sundry items, and non-taxable food. Exhibit B, page 7 and 18. The department performed an audit examination for the period of April 1st, 2012 through December 31st, 2014. The books and records provided by the appellant were fragmented and incomplete. The appellant provided a copy of their year 2012 federal income tax returns. No income tax returns were provided for years 2013 and 2014. A review of the 2012 federal income tax return, Exhibit B, page 34, showed no claimed employee wages and very little net income. The overall markup of cost computed was 32%. At first glance, this markup of cost may seem reasonable, but using a simple allocation of 80% of the claimed purchases for the income tax return to estimate taxable purchases and the reported taxable amounts per appellant sales and use tax returns, the resulting taxable markup of cost would only be 11%. An 11% taxable markup of cost is very low and is also much lower than those noted in audits of similar businesses in the area. Based on the analysis performed, the department determined that the amounts reported on the appellant's sales and use tax returns were likely understated. The department reviewed the appellant's profit and loss statements for year 2014, Exhibit B, page 32. A review of the profit and loss categories for purchases showed that cigarettes and taxable sundry items were included with the category of other. The total amount of purchases for year 2014, noted as other, was only $6,143, and for 5 of the months, the appellant had no recorded purchases in this category. This equates to about $22 per day in estimated sales of cigarettes and sundry items, which appears low. Exhibit B, page 32, column J. The appellant provided all available purchase invoices for the period of January 2014 through March 2014. Exhibit B, page 23 to 27. Only 4 invoices were provided for purchases of cigarettes from the appellant's vendor, Pitco Foods. 3 invoices were dated from January 2014, 1 invoice from February 2014, and no purchases were noted for the month of March 2014. A review of the appellant's purchases per the 4 Pitco invoices provided showed only 49 cartons of cigarettes were purchased for the 3-month period, which represents only 2.83% of all purchases for the quarter. The number of cartons purchased and the segregation percentage was deemed to be extremely low compared to the visual inspection by the department, which showed tens of thousands of dollars of cigarette inventory on hand. Exhibit B, page 32 and 37. The department made a request of the appellant's known vendor for cigarettes, Pitco Foods, to provide the appellant's purchase information for the audit period. Subsequently, the department received a customer sales history report for years 2012, 2013, and 2014. That's Exhibit B, page 39 to 153. The report included purchases of a variety of products, including cigarettes. Credits for returned merchandise, including cigarettes, were also included on the report. The department transcribed all purchases from Pitco Foods for the first quarter of 2014. The department was able to trace the 4 Pitco invoices presented to the department by the appellant into the listing. An additional 28 invoices with undisclosed purchases totaling over $27,000 was noted. The additional amounts included purchases of soda, sundry items, food, and cigarettes. For the majority of additional purchases, over $23,000 worth, were for cigarettes and tobacco products. Once the additional purchases were included with a 3-month transcription, the department recomputed segregation percentages, which were found to be more in line with those noted in audits of other convenience stores in the area. Specifically, 39% of purchases were of beer and wine, 31% for cigarettes, 26% for food, and the remaining 4% for other items. Based on the inventory observed at the store and the type and location of the business, the appellant's first quarter 2014 recorded cigarette purchases for profit and loss statements are not reasonable. Accordingly, the department's audited taxable purchases for the first quarter 2014 include the additional amounts for the third-party verification. The department also adjusted audited taxable purchases by a 2% pilferage allowance. Next, the department attempted to perform a shelf test to compute the audited taxable markup percentage, but the appellant refused the department's request. Exhibit B, page 22 and 36. Therefore, the department establishes the audited taxable markup of cost using the gross markup of cost noted in the appellant's profit and loss statements for year 2014 of 32%. The audited taxable markup was then applied to audited taxable purchases for the first quarter 2014 to compute audited taxable sales. The comparison of the audited amounts for first quarter 2014 and reported amounts for the same period showed an unexplained difference of over $31,000. Exhibit B, page 22. The percentage of error was calculated and projected to compute the understated taxable measure for the audit period. The appellant alleges someone else made the additional cigarette purchases from Pitco Foods without the consent. However, the appellant has not provided any information as to how someone would obtain their Pitco account information, the identity of the person who is supposedly using their account number to purchase large quantities of cigarettes, why someone else would use the appellant's account when they could simply obtain their own account, the time period the other person was purportedly making purchases using their account, why the appellant's business had a large quantity of cigarettes in inventory, yet relatively few cigarette purchases, why the percentage of cigarettes purchased was so low at 2.83% for the quarter in comparison to the inventory at hand. And lastly, the appellant has not provided any documentation to support why the reported taxable markup of cost for 2012 would be at a low 11%. The department's audit calculations are reasonable as they utilize first quarter 2014 amounts. The vendor survey shows the appellant's total Pitco purchases for the 3-year period of 2012 through 2014 show average purchases of cigarettes and tobacco products of about $50,000 a quarter. For the first quarter of 2014, the Pitco cigarette and tobacco purchases were only about $25,000, which is half of the average noted for the audit period. A review of the purchases for the quarters before and after the first quarter 2014 test period do not indicate higher than normal purchasing to account for the lower first quarter 2014 amounts. For fourth quarter 2013, the Pitco and purchase amounts were about $59,000, and for second quarter 2014, the amount was about $41,000. This means the first quarter 2014 test period benefits the appellant and results in a much lower understatement than had the department used the total purchase amounts for the audit period, or even the total amounts for a single year. The records provided by the appellant were not complete for any single year. The appellant has not provided any substantive documentation to refute the evidence presented. Accordingly, the department requests that the appellant's appeal be denied. This concludes my presentation. I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is Judge Aldrich. Do my panel members have any questions for the department?
This is Judge Ridenauer. I do not. Thank you very much.
This is Judge Andrew Wong. I had no questions. Thank you.
And Mr. Musson, would you like to make a final statement or a rebuttal to the department or further address any of the questions we had?
Yes, I mean, if I'm allowed, I would like to just to rebut a few items.
Okay.
This is Mr. Mosin again. A couple claims were made. The auditor, Mr. Dueñas, had expressed the same thing. He said that there were tens of thousands of dollars of cigarettes in stock. He had never produced any evidence of that. He said that it's sitting behind the counter, tens of thousands of dollars. And I asked him if he can produce some sort of proof of that, because if I go into business, there is absolutely no way there's tens of thousands of cigarettes in that location at any time. And he shrugged his shoulders, saying, "Well, you know what I mean." I don't know what he means. So this is the attitude that he's had throughout the exam, is that he makes a claim and then he doesn't own up to it with any evidence. It's just a claim sitting out there. And I'm not sure why he makes these claims. Obviously, if a client is purchasing based on the department's information, that they stated that they've had purchases of $40,000, how can they make those purchases and have tens of thousands of dollars of products sitting on the shelf? So that's the first issue. The other thing that I want to bring to the forefront here is that there are stores that are not beer and wine stores, such as my client. The reason why a lot of small businesses don't carry cigarettes like they used to is that there's been this phenomenon of smoke shops and smoke locations where people are now selling exclusively just tobacco items and cigarettes and the like. And there are a number of smoke shops in the neighborhoods within this area that have absorbed all of those clientele. So just because somebody offers tobacco sales of products doesn't mean that they're going to have tens of thousands of dollars of sales of that product. With respect to the percentage, I don't know where the 11% came from. The examiner actually agreed with the markup. In fact, they stated that the markup was sufficient, and they would use that markup. And the net effect is 32% book markup, and that does not yield 11% profit. And as far as the books and records, for this location, we do not prepare the tax returns for the taxpayer. We prepare the bookkeeping. So the income tax returns are not prepared by our office. So obviously, if we're not preparing those documents, if they fail to provide that information to us so we can relay it to the department, I don't think that should fall on our shoulders and state that the information is not correct or not provided. And we try our best. I'm speaking on the behalf of my office. We try our best to limit the time that is spent of taxpayers' dollars to do these exams. That's why when we discussed the exam with Mr. Dueñas, the examiner, the auditor, he had stated that he would like to do a shelf test, and we didn't feel that that was warranted. That was just going to be a waste of time. He already agreed with the purchase markup, so there's no need to go into the business and just verify what he's already agreeing with. So it's not that we were not cooperating or we were trying to do as little as possible. It's that if he agreed with the computed markup, then why would we need to go in there and, verify what he agrees with? So those are the things that we wanted to bring to light and share. The Bitco Wholesale is a company. They run their company how they run it. We are not trying to point fingers at people, but in this whole exam, if we're using information, data that's coming from a third party, like the wholesaler, all we ask is that data is not tainted in any way. Why would somebody want to use somebody else's account? I think it's obvious. I mean, there are bad business people out there. If somebody can walk in and buy merchandise under somebody else's name, then they can get away with purchasing, product without showing that they purchased it. And I mean, we just have to look at the current situation. I mean, there are bad people buying up medical supplies and toilet paper. Why are they doing this? I mean, there are black markets. There are bad people out there. We shouldn't punish the people that are trying their best to do things correctly, like my taxpayer. I mean, she put a hold on the account, and yet somebody went in there and made a purchase under her name again, even with the hold. So I'll stop here, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do my panel members have any further questions for the appellant or the department?
This is Judge Ridenour. I do not. Thank you very much.
This is Judge Andrew Wong. I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Milson, we have your evidence in the record and your argument. Is there anything else you would like to tell us before I submit the case?
I just appreciate everyone's time, and I speak on behalf of the taxpayer. We're confident that justice will be done, and we appreciate everyone's time.
This is Josh Aldrich again. Thank you both for being flexible with the hearing format. I appreciate your time. We're ready to submit the case. The record is now closed. This concludes the hearing. The judges will meet and decide the case based on the evidence and the arguments presented today. We will aim to send both parties our written decision no later than 100 days from today. The hearing is now in recess in preparation for the next case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.